And I made it pink! Okay, so I'll just begin. I found it amusing that the popular girls wore clicking, stilty shoes that always gave their position away. It only made them easier to avoid, and easier for boys to spot the ones who were more open to mating. Preoccupied at my locker and needing more time to organize it, I was forced to hold my ground as they passed me. Inside of my locker didn't have any significant mementos or pictures of friends, mostly because I didn't have any. I chose to be solitary. My ears twitched back and I glared at my own reflection in the mirror behind my books and the one cat statue I lauded myself at school. You guys like my outfit, by the way?
Yeah.
Although my real human ears were forced back from their regular position, the cat ears I wore on my head stayed neatly placed on my mane of coal black hair. The few hallways lined with lockers could almost make a real-life African savanna look tame. Wolves stalked through the hallway for a potential mate if they weren't already locked in a grinding, writhing, breeding dance against the green face of the lockers. The gym coach tried to pacify the potential orgies before they got too extreme, but he was more like an old weary lion surrounded by looming hyenas than a king of the jungle. The gazelles made their way around the corner a locker block down from me. Their shoes made a rhythmic clip-clopping, coming in and out of beat with the rest of their herd. It was funny that they harassed me for my predatory feline counterpart when they tried to emulate gazelles. With their little frames, dainty ankles, and hooves, they captured the attention of most boys around school. I suspected they hazed me only because they could feel the wolfish gazes of the male population shifting in my direction when they were around. Boys were constantly entranced by my short, piecey black hair and long, deliberate strides around campus. Too bad for them, the cat was a solitary animal. If I was lucky, maybe they'd sink their teeth into the fleshy behind of the gazelles. Smiling, I closed my locker with the books I needed for my next class. My ears still twitched from the clicking of their shoes, but I depended on my quiet speed to help me evade confrontation with the gazelles. Having almost made it to a safe distance, I was stopped dead in my tracks. As a cat, I had a predatory focus when excited by something, and tunnel vision unconsciously carved its way into my eyes as soon as my mind registered he was around. There was something so spastic about the way he moved, the little bird constantly taking a bath. It ignited the predator that hides behind my eyes, and I watched him patiently and quietly. Most humans were fairly useless, but this one had something I wanted. I wanted the little ball that moved around on his throat. I felt my eyes widen at just the thought of the word ball, and my long nails pulsed in my palm because I couldn't contain the urge to grab his neck. Maybe my long pointy nails could tear the ball from this little bird. God, you're so fake, said a gazelle to a lion. I gave her the mercy of ignoring her. I was stalking my prey and it didn't have hooves. You just act like a cat for attention. We all know you actually just have some kind of trauma, she said. Because I'm a cat, I had a very narrow array of emotions, so I didn't understand why what she was saying made me turn and hiss at her. I'm sure the light green of my eyes wasn't nearly as scary as my pointed teeth, but she squealed nonetheless and took more space for safety. Watching her step back in her clip-clopping shoes, I had a focused and intense gaze on her ankle as it twisted and she fell down. I could have been quick enough to catch her, but she deserved to hit that floor. Jocks swarmed her writhing figure like a pack of wolves descending on a weakened victim. Are you okay? Some random jock wearing a football jersey adorned with the school's mascot asked the frightened and injured gazelle. Let's get you to the nurse. I think she has rabies, she said, pointing her fake nail in my direction. I could almost imagine her tapping it on the desk like a miniature hoof. Shaking a chunk of my mane out of my eyes, I adjusted my cat ears but didn't say anything. Not interested in defending my disease status, I turned my eyes away from them and watched the little bird. Strange satisfaction washed down my back like a long, warm stroke when I noticed he was focused on me. Knowing how intense my stare can be, I tilted my head at a more submissive angle in order to invite him to continue looking. I could hear people talking around me. Why is Catgirl stalking Goldie? They asked each other. I could tell by the way they said Goldie that it was his last name. I would have appreciated his first name more, but it was some amount of information, and the more information I had on him, the closer I would be to getting what I wanted. My right foot sometimes acted in place of a tail for me and was tracing slow arcs on the floor as he and I considered each other. His hair was cut closely to his scalp and waved in such a way it made the light look like it was constantly weaving in and out of the dark strands. His eyes looked like a dense forest illuminated by a spring sun at noon. He was constant motion. I could see his fingers like long swan feathers fidgeting against his binder and watched motion travel from the twitch of his shoulders to his hair. When his hair moved, it looked like the short strokes between glides of a speckled dove's wing. I could still hear the wolf and gazelle bickering over my mental stability, and I decided if only to escape how loud they'd become in my right ear, I would get closer to the little bird with the bobbing throat ball. I stalked closer. His face got a little scared as I approached. I tended to make people nervous when they couldn't hear me make a single noise. Not even my jeans squeaked as my thighs rubbed together. Why do you keep looking at me? He asked, and I watched his throat wiggle around his Adam's apple. The urge to grab it was a greater temptation when up this close. Not really feeling a great need to answer, I didn't. I just continued to stare at my prey, this little ball in his throat. I felt my hearing dull to a buzz and my ears go back in anticipation of my pounce. His heartbeat slowed down and my breathing deepened. I was gonna get it. It belonged to me. It was my prey. I heard my heartbeat speed up just as the bell rang to save him. My vision widened and my hearing came back with an almost painful clarity. Bye then, he said in a tone that conveyed just how weird he thought I was. Maybe the fact another person had just written me on their avoid at all cost list should have hurt, but I only smiled. Being alone was a skill of mine. Having no friends and being the gazelle scapegoat didn't make me an outstanding choice for a friend. I knew he would avoid me like the plague I was made out to be. Most people had the misconception that any contact with me might impart a shred of my insanity, or worse, my unpopularity. Golby could avoid me all he wanted. I would destroy that little moving menace in his throat. I spent more time trying to distinguish between each differing human sense than listening to the little old lady teaching the class. At about 80 years old, she was sporting hair curlers covered only by a thin scarf with some kind of floral pattern on it. Her eyes squinted like the light hurt them, and her voice did a great intimidation of echolocation. My ears twitched from simply the pitch of her screeching. The chalkboard made more pleasant noises. If overdone perfume and a screeching teacher weren't distracting enough for me, there was also the hamster in the corner. That rodent had almost gotten me more than one prescription of ADD medication from my therapist. It wasn't distracting me with its gently squeaking cage wheel. It was trying to garner my attention by ruffling through its wood shavings. Constantly hearing every one of its tiny motions made my ears twitch and my eyes veer away from the teacher. My right foot tapped in bursts of extreme speed, then quieted down until I zeroed my hearing in on it once again. I just wanted to touch it. I wanted to feel its twitchy muscles and tiny form. I just wanted to bat it around its cage a little. I felt a strong and strange lust to touch the wild animal fur, to just feel their uninhibited fear of my human form. How their heart would race to a quicker beat, their head would turn side to side, collecting data that might hopefully bring them salvation, and the wideness of their eyes only echoing my dilating pupils. Any cat's pupils dilate at the thought of other things experiencing terror. Fear was a beautiful thing to witness as a cat. Eventually the bell rang, signaling my release from a fidgety hell. The crowd was thick as I made it to the school's watering hole. I choked on the overwhelming scent of boys who used far too many cans of body spray and microwave corn dogs. People were constant motion, but I picked him out easily. His motions seemed to be just at a different rhythm than everyone else's. His thin limbs jerked around like the air had thicker pockets in it. I could still see his Adam's apple bob in his throat from the side view I had of him. The distance between us wasn't great, but I didn't want to startle him as I studied. With my backpack in my locker, I had more freedom to slink through the crowd. From behind, I noticed his jutting shoulders so broad, and yet his skinniness caused them to point, rather than gracefully slope like the jock's. I could still see strength in his frame despite how thin he was. His long legs stood on firm ground, and he acted confident when he wasn't aware I was studying every length and crevice of him. Stalking even more closely through the crowd, I came to another visual of his side. Taking the time to study his ear, I wanted to get closer. I wanted to reach out and touch him. I wanted to feel his textures instead of just witnessing what he looked like. Suddenly, his group took over a table. I always thought it was strange that humans wanted to eat together like it was a social event. Food was food. It was nourishment, not an opportunity to gossip. A single chair was open at their table, and I decided it also belonged to me. It wasn't directly beside him, but only one human away from him was a good distance for observation. Sneaking my way through the crowd was easy when people were always afraid I had some contagious disease, with the number one symptom of becoming like me. I took my seat right before some girl with long dark hair and a denim jacket did. Her hair was thin and long, darker than mine, but shinier, and held back from the left side of her face with a jeweled clip. The clip glittered in the sunlight coming from the cafeteria windows, and I fought with myself over whether or not I was going to rip it from her hair. That was my seat, she said to me, and I didn't understand because it belonged to me. It was mine until I decided it wasn't interesting anymore. I just stared at her, and she glared at me. I'm not going to be mean, so can you please move? She asked me. Contrary to common belief, I don't acknowledge politeness or the word please as having any kind of commanding power. I'm a cat. I know no ownership or authority, and human body doesn't either. I wasn't even going to give her a no. I just turned back to my little bird. His lips were pulled straight, and I tilted my head for him. I was nice. I wasn't going to hurt him. I was just going to take his Adam's apple, and I'd never bother him again. Why do you keep staring at Denny? The girl between him and me asked. Whatever, freak show. I'll just go sit by my boyfriend. I don't need your rabies. Denny, I hope this doesn't become a normally occurring thing. The girl with the jeweled clip said before she stomped off with her flip-flop smacking the floor. Me either, he mumbled, looking back at me. Predatory calm pushed through me as my entire focus shifted to him. You like him, don't you? The girl between us addressed me again. My lips thinned for a moment because her question agitated me. She reminded me of a noisy little lamb. Her curly blonde hair just strengthened the image. I was a solitary creature. Liking somebody was a bit of a stretch for me. Even this small group was a great discomfort. "Why do you stare at me and not talk? Are you mute?" Denny asked with a high-pitched voice. He was hysterical, and it made him sound like he was squawking. I wondered if his voice was a deeper cadence when settled and secure. "No," I said, feeling my foot slide quickly under the table, but at a slow beat. I was imitating a tale I was robbed of. "Hallelujah! She speaks," he said, throwing his hands up and shaking them. His gestures were so abrupt and sporadic I couldn't look away. Why didn't he move like the other humans? His friends laughed, and my eyes narrowed from their usual almond shape. Lambs should not laugh at the lion. "Why are you sitting here? You totally like Denny, don't you? I know you do," said another girl from across me wearing a light blue headband separating her expensively streaked hair. She just looked like a horse that wanted to be a zebra. "Maybe you shouldn't make so many assumptions," I said in a smooth voice. I said everything on one breath. Anything that took more than that was an explanation, and that wasn't something I really enjoyed. My voice was deep and alluring, but didn't rumble or chime. It was slick like well-groomed fur or a seabird feather. My controlled tone showed her a small amount of anger I held, and she became uneasy around me. Her fear just led her to a dangerous curiosity. Her eyes showed me just how many questions she had for me. "Maybe you shouldn't talk to my friends that way," Denny defended her, and I felt my foot stop moving. Hitting him full force with my stare, I released any submissive energy I may have invoked for his benefit. I showed him full predator, full insanity, completely feline and lacking any humanity. My claws clicked on the tabletop, and I drew myself up to my full sitting height. Still barely anything compared to his, but I was sure I looked menacing. I could have made some smart remark, but I was more focused on how sharp my fangs felt than how sharp my words could have been. Heat prickled down my arms, and I had to grind my teeth to focus. I was the predator, and poultry would do well to remember that. "Or, she could just do whatever she wants," said the curly-haired lamb to my right. My right ear twitched, and I gave her a less predatory look. Maybe I wouldn't have lamb for lunch. "You don't scare me," Denny said, faking the confidence I saw in him when I stalked him from a distance. "You just don't know it yet," I said, standing up quicker than any of them could anticipate. The zebra actually squeaked in response. I walked away feeling how each one of my steps made my hips rock. My feet avoided spills and food wrappers, expertly keeping my shoes clean. I knew he was watching, and I tried not to concentrate too hard on my own movements. If I got distracted, I would trip and embarrass myself. I heard the gazelles coming from my right and veered sharply to my left. The entire outline of the cafeteria was stamped firmly in my mind, and I made it outside to the quad. The quad was like the shade trees that would normally grow around an oasis. There were cement picnic tables under the eaves and large grassy areas surrounded on all sides by offices and classrooms. Too many iPods were playing, and they blended together in an agitating whine. I let out a quick breath with a huff and shook my head. The wine still tickled my eardrums when the thick smell of body spray splashed against my nose and stung my throat. I pulled closer to the grassy area, only to hear Denny's voice. "Cat girl!" he called after me, flapping one of his arms around, and I followed it as if watching each convulsive moment frame by frame. "Bird boy," I wanted to call back. "I'm sorry," he said, and the roundness of his hazel eyes displayed his sincerity. My brows drew together. I didn't understand why he was apologizing to me. Me and my friend shouldn't have treated you like that. His words pecked at my heart. I wanted to move away from him, but couldn't. "Are you being nice to me?" I asked in a smooth voice I surprisingly managed. "Well, someone's got to be right," he said, giving me a smile. For the first time, when he looked at me, it wasn't with complete fear. Oh, there was still fear, but there was also a smidge of kindness, and that was something I wasn't very comfortable with. It made the middle of my chest hurt. I almost wanted to be nice back, but I really had no idea how. I'd been in therapy for years, but what finally got me to even peek out of my shell was this little bird. He opened his arms to me, and my brows drug themselves even closer together. I saw every movement and every jerk of muscle beneath his skin, but it still shocked me when his arms came around me in a hug. His skinny arms didn't make me feel safe or special or any of the stuff the movies would lead on to, but what I did feel was how twitchy he really was. Every place his body touched mine vibrated at a different frequency and in different directions. My eyes widened and my back tensed up. I wondered if this was what catnip did to cats. My every sense was engaged now. I could smell the spicy scent of his deodorant and hear the zipper in his hoodie slide across his jeans. He only took one breath, but it bunched and tensed muscles all through his torso as it traveled to his diaphragm. As he released me, his neck came into view, and I couldn't look away from the ball in his throat. It moved as he swallowed, and I snapped. Less than a minute ago, I was having an emotional breakthrough. But when he held me so close to his twitching, it reawakened the cat within me, and I attacked. My breathing had gotten ragged, and I panted as my claws tasted my prey for the first time. My pointed fingernails caused a few drops of blood to escape his pale skin, and the wideness of his eyes caused something primal within me to purr in pleasure. His fear was so strong I could taste it on the back of my tongue. I had it. It was mine. Until I was grabbed around the waist and Denny was left to fall back onto the cement walkway. "Catgirl finally lost it!" A deep voice called directly into my ear. I hissed and screamed. I clawed the arms around me, but I couldn't garner my own freedom. Denny sat up choking. He was twitching more than usual, and a tear fell from the corner of his eye. When he finally turned to me, I was struck full force with the deep venom of guilt. The only person who had ever bothered to show me true kindness was clutching his bleeding throat and coughing in pain that I had caused and taken great pleasure in. Good thing I had 9 lives, because the guilt was killing me.